Is it possible to practice a sport without getting out of your chair? Is there a way we can see without vision? In fact, can we practice with our eyes closed, without moving and still improve? Stay tuned to understand how. Hi, I'm Dr. Labby. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm an ophthalmologist and sports vision specialist with 30 plus years of experience working with professional athletes in almost every sport. In previous videos, we've talked about a great deal about the vision pyramid and how information moves from the eyes to the decision parts of the brain, then onto the motor areas to perform a visually guided motor action. Today, we'll be talking about the concept of visualization, or imagery, as it's known to elite athletes. Visualization includes all of the processes I just described, although without any physical part supplied by the eyes. Instead, it relies on previous visual images to be remembered and replayed and fed forward to the decision and finally the motor areas of the brain. There are four main ingredients for optimal visualization. Imagery perspective is number one, and basically this is where the camera is located. Are you viewing from within your own body, or are you seeing yourself from the outside perspective of others? One isn't necessarily better than the other one, it's a personal preference. The second factor is control, a measure of how well you can imagine what you want to imagine. If you fail in the task you're imagining, then go back and do it again until you have good sense to control and succeed. The third one, important, is multiple senses. Good visualization is more than just what you see. It should include all the other senses like hearing, touch, pressure of the wind in your face, all the other senses that you would naturally feel in your sport when you're actually in activity. The fourth is speed. Unlike in the real-world experience, you should be able to control the speed of the visualized practice. Speed can be slowed to allow for fine-tuning of motor actions or sped up to make the experience more difficult. Recently, 3 research papers have been published which help explain how visualization works. And this is interesting. In the first paper, the authors worked with 24 downhill ski racers. Each racer was assigned to one of 3 groups. In the first group, the skiers booted up, got all their equipment, got fully dressed and went to the top of the mountain and were placed at the beginning of the course for their visualization experience. The second group performed their visualization, though, indoors without any ski equipment, and the third group acted as a control group. All they did were simple physical warm-ups. When finished, each group then skied down the slalom course and were timed and scored. Not surprisingly, the visualization training group did the best. They had the full gear and had the best average time going down the slope, followed by the indoor visualization group, and the control group came in last with the worst times. This study suggests that visualization should be done under the most realistic conditions possible. In the next set of papers, the authors looked at the effective imagery perspective, the first item we spoke about a few minutes ago, whether it was internal or external. Were you seeing the course visualized as yourself, or were you seeing the course visualized outside by others? In the first study, they compared skiers as well as drivers on a slalom task using either internal or external visual imagery. They found that in each case, the athlete who was trained with the internal visual imagery performed better. In the next paper, the scientists looked at how adding multiple senses, or how it feels, to perform the action can supplement that internal visual imagery effect. Not surprisingly, the more real the experience, the better the training, the faster times were achieved by the racers who practiced both the internal visual imagery with true sensory feedback. And now we're getting somewhere. We now understand what we should do to achieve the best results from imagery. But the question still remains, is this simulating the same pathways that would be stimulated in the brain if we did actual physical practice? This question was answered by our final study, which used functional MRI brain images to view which parts of the brain were active during the visualization process. This study found that when visual imaging is used, the identical parts of the brain are activated as when actual training occurs. Specifically, the visual part of the brain is activated initially, and then internal and external imagery both send signals moving forward in the brain along what is known as the dorsal and ventral pathways, exactly the same pathways that we use in actual vision. So what have we learned? Firstly, we can gain similar training effects with visualization as we do with actual sports practice and performance. We certainly don't get the physical training effects, but we do get the brain cognitive effects that are an important part of ultimate optimal performance of the sport. Secondly, we have learned that ideally, when performing visualization, we want to simulate as closely as possible the actual sport, both in terms of equipment as well as experience, without actually performing the sport for maximal benefit. Lastly, we have seen that with optimal visualization, we see the same brain pathways activated as in true physical training, further explaining how visualization can be an effective supplement to other forms of training. With this in mind, I think there's enough evidence that visualization should be a part of every athlete's training program. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be notified about each of our weekly posts. Thanks for watching and see you next time.